question is, why now? What's the specific immediate threat? And I don't think the administration is doing a very good job of explaining why now, what the objective is, and what is the immediate threat that needed to be removed.
I'm joined by Gerry Baker, editor-at-large for the Wall Street Journal and Times columnist. Good evening, Gerry.
Hello.
Big day to speak to you. Glad you're with us. And the historian and podcast host of Where Politics Meets History, Tessa Dunlop, also with us tonight. Evening, Tessa.
Hello, good evening.
Thanks so much for being with us, both of you. Let's recap where we are so far as we walk through what is happening in Iran and the wider region. Day 3 of the Iran war today, then. And airstrikes from both sides continue to cause disruption across the Middle East. Donald Trump, spoken today, finally promised that there's more to come, confirming the biggest wave of attacks on Iran hasn't even happened, he said. We've seen Iran put pressure on the Gulf states in the region too. A major gas plant has been hit in Qatar, and this evening the US Embassy in Jordan has been evacuated over a security alert. Iran has also closed the Strait of Hormuz, the world's most vital oil export route. Around a fifth of global oil travels through the waterway, connects the biggest Gulf oil producers with the Gulf of Oman and the Arabian Sea. We spoke to Badr Al-Saif earlier, a professor of history at Kuwait University and associate at Chatham House. He said peace talks must resume, but this time Israel need to be involved too.
I think everything is up for negotiation, and it needs to not only involve the US and Iran, but frankly to also involve Israel, because the objectives are not clearly aligned between the US and Israel, even though it seems to be the case, but that's not really the case. We've known for the longest time that Israel has had regime change in mind. And this was the opportunity given to them to focus on this objective. The US in the past few days and prior to that have come up with a whole host of different objectives.
Yeah, so the assumption is that Iran's putting pressure on its Gulf state neighbours to force Donald Trump to get back round the table. Our guest there, Badr Al-Saif, also said that actually, according to Oman, Iran was ready to get rid of its nuclear capabilities completely. That was a line coming out of Iran. Obviously, that wasn't enough to convince the United States. Gerry, your perspective here on the message that Donald Trump is giving to Americans?
Well, it's confused and confusing. I just, by the way, just watched Marco Rubio literally seconds ago.
Yeah, we have as well.
The Secretary of State just giving his account. We've heard from Rubio, we've heard from Peter Hegseth, we heard from the Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Dan Kane. We heard from the President himself today, and there is there's a problem here because they are having difficulty sort of, giving a straight answer to the question, why this and why now. And I think there is a lot of unease here, not being publicly expressed by any Republicans. They're all solidly behind the president. But from people I speak to, people you see sort of, usually kind of loyal Trump supporters, there's a lot of, well, of course, now that America is at war, of course, there's a rally around the flag effect. But there's a lot of question marks about what is actually the objective here, why we're doing this, and why we're doing it now. And, so you've heard that it's, again, Rubio just repeated this claim that, there was an imminent threat from Iran to U.S. forces. I don't think anybody really believes that. Well, in fact, there were Pentagon officials have actually been off the record denying that. There was also, he mentioned that Israel was, needed to strike and was so the United States needed to come in with Israel. We've heard, as you just heard there, whether is this about regime change? The president has kind of hinted a couple of times that it is. Hegseth was out there today saying absolutely not. It's not about regime change. We'd love the regime to change, obviously. And as he said, obviously with the killing of Ali Khamenei, it has changed, but the regime hasn't actually obviously changed. There's a lot of, look, there's a strong case that can be made that the United States has been at war with Iran in a kind of simmering way for 47 years. The Islamic Republic was born. Its inaugural acts was, remember, to take those Americans hostage in 1979 for 440 days. It's been killing Americans ever since, directly and through its own proxies in Lebanon, in Iraq, in the Gulf, around the world, in Gaza, through Hamas. And I think there's a case that can be made. The United States, has failed to deal with that continuing offensive from Iran, and there's a case for doing it now. The question is, why now? What's the specific immediate threat? And I don't think the administration is doing a very good job of explaining why now, what the objective is, and what is the immediate threat that needed to be removed.
And look, I was reading reports yesterday and early today from sources inside the Pentagon who said that it is apparent that there is no real clear plan at the moment, that CIA intelligence had revealed to Israel that the Ayatollah Khamenei and his senior leadership was in a specific location and could be struck. And that information was given to Israel, and it was decided that they would take the opportunity, perhaps without ensuring that that was legal. That's the question. Marco Rubio's due to brief Republican and Democrats leaders in the Sensitive Compartmented Information Facility, the SCIF room. SIF room in Congress. So that's going on. I mean, look, no sort of Republican has put their neck above or put their head above the water yet and sort of directly criticised Donald Trump. But there are, parts of his support here, Jerry, who are questioning whether this is a betrayal of Donald Trump's insistence that he would not launch any foreign forever wars. Here you have them taking on, I'll ask you to be brief so we can hand this over to Tessa as well. But, here we have Donald Trump taking on an extremely powerful regime. Let's not dumb down the power of Iran.
Yeah, and I will be brief. I think we can say on that one that I think this is, look, once war starts, as as a famous, whatever the various cliches are, the war plan goes out the window. One thing we can be fairly confident, though, is that there is absolutely no intention of this, of the president making this a long war. I thought what was most interesting, what we heard today, particularly from Hegseth, was essentially Donald Trump defines his own objectives. The objectives are, supposedly, destroy the Navy, destroy the ballistic missiles, make sure Iran never gets a nuclear weapon again. He can, at any point, Kate, in the next few days, couple of weeks, whatever, just say, mission accomplished, objectives achieved, whether or not there's objective evidence for that, it doesn't matter. He can say, I've accomplished our objectives. I've accomplished what we intended to do. We're now, we're standing by. We'll pull some of our forces. We'll leave some there. So I do think the risk that we're going to be dragged into an Iraq-style 10-year war or an Afghanistan-style 20-year war is pretty remote. But again, it doesn't really answer the larger question about why the United States is doing this right now and what it really wants to achieve through this.
Yes, and look, 6 US military personnel have now been killed. That updated figure just coming through to us. And so again, it is about justifying, if Trump does pull back, Tessa, from this and say it sort of suits us now to, yes, we've completed all of our objectives, even though we don't know what those objectives are, and we're just going to pull out of this in a very rapid fashion. Yes, that's one perspective, but if there is no clear story about what this has achieved, it's not just his support base that are going to be very upset. It's going to upset an awful lot of people within the administration if US military personnel have lost their lives. The objective surely is to get Iran to relent on the extent of their nuclear capabilities. Surely that is the red line. Surely that has to be the bare minimum objective here.
Well, except if you believe Trump last year, he dealt with their nuclear capabilities. I mean, you say there's no clear story, but Trump's always just made up the story as he's gone along. If he'd come out at the weekend and go, hey, guys, I've most brilliant deal with Germany. We have a nuclear deal. We've got a deal. We would have been forced to swallow it. Instead, he chose to come out and go, hey, we're at war, a big, beautiful war. I mean, he literally, off the cuff, makes it up. And it's the way he wants to play it. I thought very apt, actually, was Max Hastings writing in the Times, your newspaper. He talked of the sheer irresponsibility of it all, that the Trump administration, have institutionalized this lack of compassion, and compassion is a defining quality of a civilized state. It reminds me, I was talking to a Jewish Bletchley veteran the back end of last year, and progressive, deeply anxious about the war. And an ad hoc comment, she sort of thought, oh, God, it would be better if somebody took out Benjamin Netanyahu. And I remember I took this to my podcast, and my podcast partner said, you can't say that. You can't say that on air. Well, actually, you can say anything you damn well want now, can't you? Once you assassinate one international leader, game for anybody. The doors are open. They've been blown off. If I was Zelensky, already surrounded by marksmen, anxiety etched on his face, I'd be feeling even more concerned, if it's possible for him to look even more concerned. Every world leader, I mean, their life insurance has just gone through the roof. So that's just on one level, that we live in a much more dangerous world. And by the way, the unprecedented aspect is that this is being led from the head of the free world, the democratic world, not from an autocratic state. And I thought the other fascinating thing, of course, today was Keir Starmer's response. And it's quite extraordinary. And I agree, it's a very, very hard needle for him and his administration as a left-leaning, supposedly, administration. It's a very, very hard line for him to walk. But nonetheless, he seems to have fallen flat on his face in a quite spectacular fashion. You come down decisively on one side or another, and for the life of me, and I don't understand how these talks at a very high level take place. I know they were taking place late on Friday night about the Chagos Islands military base, for example, but I just can't understand why we can't apply some leverage. We've got several bases, very strategically significant in the area, from Cyprus right through to the Chagos Islands, and why we couldn't say, look, commit more fully or give us some kind of leverage in Ukraine and we'll back this. Forgive me, but I don't get it. I don't get why we can't put that line in the sand. And if Trump goes no, then Keir Starmer can look down the barrel and say, we're not going to join America in this instance. Instead, he's kind of given us several shades of grey.
Well, OK, let's talk about Keir Starmer. And maybe it's a pivot. Maybe it makes sense. Maybe he's just being rightly cautious. He did, of course, say he wasn't going to get involved. He refused to get involved in the offensive attack on Iran by providing help from UK military bases. He is, of course, happy to offer those bases for any defensive action because now Iran has started to issue an assault on Gulf states. That means that UK military personnel and UK people are under threat. I spoke to Hosro Isfahani earlier. He's a research director for the National Union for Democracy in Iran. He was pretty critical of Keir Starmer's role.
Earlier in this programme, you aired comments from Keir Starmer, a man who has the backbone made out of jelly. What he has done for the Iranian people. When you talk about Donald Trump and Iranians trusting him or not, at least he has delivered something. Ali Khamenei is dead thanks to Israel and the United States. What the British government has offered the Iranian people, other than appeasement.
What do you make of that, Jerry?
Yeah, I mean, I'm sympathetic. Look, and this idea that Tessa says that, every world leader is in danger. We ought to be clear about who Ali Khamenei was and what he represented. I mean, this is a regime that is committed to the export of revolutionary Islam around the world, to the destruction of the Jewish state, to the murder of as many Jews as it can around the world, to implacable opposition, and indeed, as I've said, a demonstrated opposition over 47 years of killing as many Americans as they can. So I'm hoping that we're not going to sort of suggest that because the United States has taken out an absolutely implacable enemy, that this somehow means that Volodymyr Zelensky is under challenge. I mean, that gentleman from Iran is basically right. I mean, the problem with Starmer is, as with everything, I think if you don't have a kind of real core set of beliefs, then you are going to look incredibly weak. I mean, either join in with the United States and Israel in this action and say, yes, we do want to take out this terrible regime and we do want to stand with the Iranian people and give them a chance at a decent way of life and a decent democracy, or say, no, it's against international law. America's behaving like a rogue state. We're not going to do it. But instead, we have one day of 48 hours maybe of him sort of saying, well, we're not sure, we're defending our own interests, but, there are questions about international law. Then the next day it's actually, no, we are now willing to join in. There is no backbone there.
Okay, well, look, go on, Tessa.
I just very quickly, I wanted to agree with Jerry on that latter point, but on that, the first point about the existential threat to Israel, of course, being the partner of America in this, and that very confusing idea of what Israel is, I think trying to get a handle on two very different faces of Israel. One, a country existentially threatened, one that is perpetually afraid of its life, and the other, which is this imperial power, this hegemon in the region with more nukes and better military support and better able to take out its enemies than any other country in the region. And it's totally contradictory. It's fascinating, actually, the way in which Israel presents on two fronts consistently at the same time.
Israel has been surrounded by countries that have been trying to eliminate it from the moment it was founded. And let me just put it this way. Everybody believes Israel has a nuclear weapon. We don't know for sure. But let's put it this way. As far as we know, Israel is the only country in that region then that has a nuclear weapon. And what's happened? No other country has found itself destroyed by a nuclear weapon. Can you imagine if the situation were the other way around? If Iran had a nuclear weapon and Israel didn't, what do people think would be likely to happen? Do you think Israel would still exist? Or do you think it would be a smoking ruin?
Forgive me,
you cannot compare these two countries. It's just utterly absurd.
I wasn't comparing the two countries. I wasn't comparing the two countries. I was suggesting
you were saying it was a hegemon.
The way in which
a hegemon using its power to sort of bully other countries in the region. It isn't. It's trying to survive.
I didn't actually use the word bully. I didn't use the word bully. Yeah, it's also an occupying power in the region. And every day, people are still dying in Gaza. That's been conveniently forgotten. And I think we need to remember that as the only democratic leader, elected leader in the region, Benjamin Netanyahu actually also has an election this year. So guess what? Huge domestic incentive for him to distract and to deliver another military victory for his people.
Yeah, at least Israel does have an election and a democratic system and respects the rights of all peoples of all walks of life, unlike any other country in that region.
I just don't think that can be said at the moment in Gaza. I just think we need to be really clear on that.
That is what Israel is trying to defend. It's trying to defend its democratic system. What is Iran and Saudi Arabia? What are they all trying to defend?
Okay, look.
Let's be honest about it. It's a two-tier system, though, isn't it? It is, because if you're in Gaza, things are marginally less bad than they were. But I don't think we can argue that
Gaza was used as the basis the base for an organization that was trying to wipe Israel off the map and kill every Jew that they could possibly get hold of.
Why, it's peace. Why are those people still being bombed?
If Wales were being used in the same way to attack English people and to eliminate English people, I can guarantee you that a powerful country like England would absolutely make sure that it eliminated
Jerry,
that threat.
Tessa, we must move on. When we come back, we'll talk about local authorities using listening devices as a form of surveillance. And we'll also talk about water cremations. Could you be tempted? It's Kate Borsey. It's the evening edition on Times Radio. Tessa Dunlop and Jerry Baker with us at the moment. More to come then. This show comes to you in association with the UK government's boiler upgrade scheme. Upgrade your heating with a £7,500 heat pump grant. Check your eligibility at gov.uk/clean energy.
Times Radio Breakfast with Kate McCann and Stig Abel.
We're going to bring you everything you need to know as conflict continues to escalate in the Middle East. We'll speak to decision makers, experts and reporters as we all collectively try to make sense of just what is happening.
At home, the Chancellor will reveal her spring statement. We'll preview what she'll be unveiling. And from 9, our leaders panel, the former Conservative leader and Foreign Secretary William Hague and the former Scottish Labour leader Kezia Dugdale talk us through the biggest stories of the day. Times Radio Breakfast with Kate McCann and Stig Abel.
Tomorrow morning from 6 on Times Radio.
You've saved carefully for your future, your plans, your peace of mind. Now there's good news. FSCS protection for your savings and current accounts has risen to £120,000 per eligible person at UK authorised banks, building societies and credit unions. From the very first pound right up to £120,000, it's all protected, so you can focus on what matters with confidence. See what it means for you at fscs.org.uk. Your savings, FSCS protected.
The Philly cheese stack is back at McDonald's and it's still intensely cheesy. Imagine the cheesiest thing ever. Now cover it in cheese. Add 2 beef patties, cheddar cheese sauce, crispy onions, and even more cheese. The Philly cheese stack. Did we mention it's cheesy? Available until the 16th of March 2026 from 11 a.m. Fees apply to delivery orders. Price and participation may vary, subject to availability.
Download the free Times Radio app and listen to us wherever you are.
The evening edition on Times Radio with the UK government's boiler upgrade scheme. A heat pump can reduce your home's air pollution compared to a traditional boiler. Find out more at gov.uk/clean energy.
It's Kate Borsey. It is the evening edition on Times Radio. We're joined by Jerry Baker, the Times columnist and editor-at-large of the Wall Street Journal, and Tessa Dunlop, the historian and podcast host of Where Politics Meets History. Just a quick update for you, because, of course, it is an ever-developing situation in Iran and beyond. Israel has issued an evacuation warning now for Tehran residents. Looks like they are intending or signalling they will up their operations in Iran. let's take a little turn elsewhere with both of you. 5 local authorities now have installed or are considering using listening devices in their CCTV systems. An investigation by the iPaper revealed councils are using AI audio software to pick up noises like gunshots or graffiti spray paint cans to help monitor potential criminal or antisocial behaviour. Freedom fighters, I was about to say, people who are worried about public surveillance say this is a step too far. Is it, Jerry? Is this too much of Big Brother state, or is this quite helpful?
No, I mean, on the one hand, I instinctively dislike things like this. This does seem, I don't trust the government. I don't trust people with power and authority not to misuse devices like this. And I think it is concerning. A part of me, however, kind of holds my hands up a little bit here and says in a digital age, and an age increasingly dominated by, as it will be, increasingly dominated by artificial intelligence and the world in everything around us, I'm not sure how we really actually avoid this. I mean, unless you take yourself back to the land, as it were, disappear from an urban environment, cut yourself off completely from the digital world, you're going to find it very hard to do so. But I think this is, look, they have it in cities here in the United States. Washington, D.C. has had a very similar a similar system to pick up the sound of gunshots so that they can be responded to quickly by police. Again, I just don't trust governments not to misuse that the eavesdropping activity and the information they can attain from it.
Yeah, I actually wonder how fail-safe this is as well, Tessa. Whether it could actually cause more bother and waste more police resources than it actually helps cut crime.
Well, certainly cameras are not 100% foolproof, are they? I know they apparently have racial bias, and also individuals are suddenly approached or alarms go off because their face looks like a shoplifter's face. And guess what? The camera has got it wrong. But I was interested to see what this sound tech is being used for. The FOI data that's been collected by the iPaper that ran this research showed Westminster had acoustic cameras in the Maidenhill area of North London. This was to support evidence gathering around antisocial behaviour. What is antisocial behaviour? Whenever I get on the street, I feel everything appears really antisocial, but I'm worrying that it might just be my age. Apparently, nuisance issues involve excessive noise and public urination. I'm not quite sure how
are you going to pick up the sound of someone peeing? Also,
unless it's a donkey urinating.
Oh gosh.
There's one in Great Yarmouth. There's one in Great Yarmouth, and that's to crack down on loud music and engine noise. And apparently it's predominantly engine noise, which interested me because I thought it might be dogs. Dogs barking is a big trigger, apparently, in backyards.
Yes, it is. But in certain places where you can drive freely, maybe Yarmouth is one of those, people style their cars, don't they? They basically change the exhaust and make them absolutely huge and then sort of, race around in very loud cars. I suppose, look, one of the biggest forms of antisocial behaviour, or at least what upsets people on the streets, is people drug dealing, and that's never noisy, is it? So I guess you just have to work out how effective this is going to be. Now, a bit of an about turn. Scotland have legalised water cremations, making them the first country in the UK to do so. The process is called alkaline hydrolysis. It gives people a third option instead of burial or traditional cremation. How nice. 3 options now, Jerry. Could you be tempted?
Well, actually, we had our dog, who sadly died a couple of years ago. He was aquamated, I think they call it. I don't know whether that's a brand name. How
does it work then, Jerry? Explain it to us.
So I think they instead of incinerating the body, it is placed in a sort of very high pressure water tank, and the body sort of rapidly sort of disintegrates, and you're left with a similar thing, an urn or whatever it is that you had. Our poor little dog, that's what we ended up with. I understand, from everything I understand, it is environmentally friendlier. I can't remember now whether it cost a lot more. It probably did. Inevitably, these things probably do. But yeah, if people want to be want to be cremated, want to have, one way or another, we're all going to have to choose how our remains are treated, and I suppose it is another option. It seemed to, as I say, we experienced it with a dog, and it seemed all to go very well. But what did we know? I mean, in the end, I'd always slightly wonder when you're presented with this urn of someone's remains.
Do you know what has really happened to your dog?
What the heck do you know? I mean, how has anyone ever tested these things?
I mean, the process, Tessa says here, involves weighing the body, heating it to, and apologies if our listeners are sensitive. So you heat the body up to 150 degrees Celsius in a mixture of potassium hydroxide and water for up to 90 minutes. This dissolves the body tissue, leaving only the bones, which are then rinsed at 120 degrees Celsius, dried and pulverised into a coarse powder using a machine called a cremulator. So, I mean, when I first read about this, I thought, that sounds lovely and peaceful, doesn't it? Being sent off in the water. But no, you're sort of being incinerated alive, but just in a very high pressurised water tank, aren't you?
Basically being, I don't know, dissolved like a Disprin or something. Yes. Kindly Earth holds the exclusive rights to manufacturing the hydrolysis equipment, so they're going to be quids in, aren't they? It's interesting because people were very squeamish when cremation was first introduced at the turn of the century, and now it takes up or accounts for 80% of all deaths. My father opted to donate his body to science. You know, after you're 65, they no longer want your organs, but they're always very keen, medical schools, but don't know how to approach you to volunteer your body for research. And a lot of people, at the time when Dad decided to do this, obviously I made a little program about it because it never occurred to me that you could donate your cadaver. And he said, yes, we'll save a fortune. He died the year of the financial crash in 2008. He said, I won't cost you a bean. They'll pick me up, they'll take me away, and a lovely, pretty student will pore over my dead body. And it's exactly what happened.
Fair enough.
Dental students and medical students, and they made a big thing of it. And then the Human Tissue Organisation, that the body that accounts for us, reported back within a year that there'd been a spike in body donations. And previous to that, they had been importing bodies because doctors and medical schools simply didn't know how to approach people of a certain age and suggest this might be an option. Now, at the end of it all, he got cremated, and then we had a sort of ecumenical service with other body donors. Who knows, in years to come, they may all be melted after they've had their cadavers poured over by attractive young students.
Well, I can't think of a better way to go, Jerry. I can't top that. Thank you, both of you. Really interesting to hear from you. Jerry Baker, as ever, you can read Jerry at thetimes.com with a digital subscription, also in the paper. Times columnist and editor-at-large of the Wall Street Journal. And Tessa Dunlop, the historian and podcast host of Where Politics Meets History. Great to have you both on. Thank you.